The wind howled outside the Red Keep as dusk fell upon King's Landing. Eddard Stark stood by the window of his chamber, his gray eyes scanning the bustling courtyard below. The capital was a den of snakes, and he'd known it since the day he arrived. But now he had proof, clear, undeniable evidence that Cersei Lannister's children were not the king's. He had confronted her that morning in the Godswood, told her plainly, "When the king returns from the hunt, I will tell him the truth." Cersei had not begged. She had not pleaded. Instead, she warned him, "When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die." She had walked away with the confidence of someone who knew she was safe. But she wasn't. Ned stood there for hours, haunted by the memory of his sister, Lyanna. He thought of Robert, drunk and oblivious in the woods. He thought of his daughters, Arya and Sansa, tangled in the court's web. He thought of Jon Snow, his bastard boy who deserved a better world. And in that moment, Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, made the most un-Ned-like decision of his life. He called Jory Cassel, his loyal captain of the guard. "Gather 3 of our men. We ride tonight, quietly. Cersei must die before Robert returns." It was treason. It was dishonorable. But it was necessary. Under the cloak of night, they made their way to the Tower of the Hand. Cersei had recently moved into her private chamber near Maegor's Holdfast, far from Robert's chambers. She felt untouchable and safe. She was wrong. Jory knocked on her door with the smooth arrogance of a man delivering a message. The guards standing outside, Lannister men, didn't expect anything unusual, but by the time they realized something was wrong, it was too late. Ned burst into the room, sword drawn. Cersei turned from the window, wearing a blood-red gown, her golden hair falling in waves. Her green eyes widened. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. "I gave you a chance," Ned said, his voice low, almost mournful. "You spat on it." She tried to run. Jory caught her arm. Cersei slapped him, screamed, clawed, but Ned stepped forward and drove his sword through her chest. She gasped, blood rushing from her lips. Her eyes locked with his. No fear, no remorse. Just rage. Then she crumpled. Ned's hand trembled as he withdrew ice, its steel soaked in crimson. His men stared at him, shocked. Even Jory. "My lord, what have we done? We've saved the realm." They left quickly, taking care to hide their presence. The 2 Lannister guards were quietly dispatched, their bodies hidden in the courtyard garden. The silence of the night held the secret tightly. The next morning, the court was in chaos. Cersei's body was found in her chambers, throat slit, the sheets soaked in her noble blood. Her children screamed. Tommen wept. Joffrey raged. But more than anything, Tywin Lannister fumed. Eddard Stark walked into the small council meeting before anyone could speak. "I have proof that Queen Cersei's children are not of royal blood. They are Jaime Lannister's bastards. She sought to usurp the throne upon Robert's death. I acted to protect the realm." Littlefinger raised an eyebrow, impressed but cautious. "You killed the queen. Without the king's word? The king is hunting stags while lions plan his death. I stopped the threat." Varys said nothing, his fingers steepled under his chin. Grand Maester Pycelle was speechless. Renly Baratheon, young and eager, spoke up. "If you're right, Lord. Stark, the children have no claim. We should support Stannis." But Ned shook his head. "Stannis is too far, too cold. Robert is still king. We must prepare for his return." That evening, Robert returned from the hunt, bruised but alive. He'd nearly been gored by a boar, but survived thanks to Ser Barristan's intervention. He walked into the Red Keep drunk, laughing, until he heard. "Cersei is dead?" he whispered, staring at Ned. "You killed her?" Ned gave him the letter, the proof, the records, John Aaron's final words. The seed is strong. Robert crumpled to the ground, clutching the parchments. She lied to me. She gave me false heirs. She would have killed you, Robert. The king's face was pale, wet with tears. Then he stood, trembling. I'll burn them all. And that was the moment Robert Baratheon truly became king. He summoned the court. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were stripped of their titles. Jaime was arrested in the throne room. Tywin Lannister, upon hearing of his daughter's death, retreated to Casterly Rock and raised banners. War was inevitable. But it had already begun. The Raven from King's Landing reached Casterly Rock at dawn, its black wings slicing through the misty sky like a dagger through silk. Tywin Lannister read the message with eyes that never blinked, lips tight as a noose. His daughter, his pride, his calculated queen, was dead, murdered by Eddard Stark under the veil of justice. It wasn't just vengeance that stirred within him, it was humiliation. His legacy threatened, his bloodline mocked. The wolves had drawn first blood, and the lion would roar back. By midday, the banners of House Lannister were raised. 100,000 men began to assemble. Back in King's Landing, Ned Stark knew the cost of what he had done. He had slain a queen, accused her children of illegitimacy, and disrupted the royal succession. Yet he remained calm, standing by the godswood as the sun dipped behind the Red Keep. Arya practiced her water dancing nearby, unaware of the storm. Coming for her father, Sansa, however, had locked herself away. She loved Joffrey, at least she thought she did, and now her prince, the boy she'd been told would be her husband and king, was no longer even considered royal. Her dreams were bleeding out like a wounded stag. Ned tried to talk to her, but she only screamed, "You ruined everything," and slammed the door. Robert Baratheon tried to rule in the aftermath. He summoned his council, appointed Renly as master of laws, and Sir Barristan to oversee order in the city. But the king was not built for politics. Wine and regret became his companions. He grieved for Cersei in his own strange way, muttering to Ned between sips of Arbor Gold, "She lied to me, Ned, but gods, she was beautiful." The truth needed to come out, Ned replied. Robert's hand trembled. "And now we burn for it." Meanwhile, in the Tower of the Hand, Varys visited Ned late one evening. He wore his usual silks, face unreadable. "You made a bold move, my lord, but I fear boldness only works for men like Littlefinger, not men like you." Ned narrowed his eyes. "Speak plainly." Tywin Lannister marches, and not just from the west. He sent word to Harrenhal, Riverrun, even Dorne. He's stirring old debts, buying old favors. He'll have to march over 1,000 corpses before he touches the crown. Varys's smile was thin. He just might. Within a week, ravens screamed across the realm. House Lannister declared rebellion, denouncing the murder of Queen Cersei as treason. Tywin's message was clear. The wolf has broken the pact. The lion shall answer. The Riverlands braced for war. Riverrun sent scouts. The Freys watched and waited like vultures. In Winterfell, Robb Stark received his father's raven. The message was short but heavy. War comes. Prepare the North. Robb held the letter with a clenched jaw, heart pounding. He was only 16, but now he was heir to the North, and the North needed to rise. He turned to Theon Greyjoy, always grinning, always eager. "Tell Lord Karstark, Lord Umber, and the Mormonts. We march south." Theon laughed. Finally, some action. Back in King's Landing, tension curdled the air. The city felt different, colder, more dangerous. Littlefinger, ever the opportunist, came to Ned one evening with an offer. You've started something no one can stop, my lord. But if you want to win, you'll need more than honor. You'll need chaos. You'll need gold, Ned replied with iron in his voice. I'll win with truth and men I trust, not whores and whispers. Littlefinger chuckled. Then you've already lost. As news of the rising war spread, Stannis Baratheon finally broke his silence. From Dragonstone came his declaration. I am the rightful heir. The usurper's bastards have no claim. Any who deny me are traitors. But the lords of the realm were reluctant. Stannis was feared, not loved, and the shadow of Tywin's gold hung over them like a noose. In the heart of the Red Keep, Tommen and Myrcella cried behind closed doors. They were only children, stripped of their titles, their safety, and now their mother. Joffrey, meanwhile, refused to be broken. He demanded a sword, screamed that he was king, that Ned Stark would pay. He'll regret ever crossing a lion, he spat to his grandfather's empty seat. But no one listened to the bastard prince anymore. Sir Jaime Lannister, once untouchable, now sat chained. In the dungeons, his golden hair matted and filthy. Ned visited him once. You took your sister to bed, lied to your king, birthed a false dynasty. Jaime smirked, even in chains. And you murdered the mother of my children in cold blood. We're both monsters now, Stark. You made your choices. Now you live with them. Jaime leaned in, his voice like poison. You killed the queen, but you should have killed the lion too. Ned left without a word. Outside the walls of the capital, Tywin's armies closed in. He moved with brutal speed, pillaging through the riverlands, crushing smaller houses that dared oppose him. He offered the same deal to every lord, kneel or burn. Inside King's Landing, the city began to starve. Grain shipments slowed. Refugees poured in. Whispers of rebellion stirred among the common folk. The city was a spark away from combustion. Ned Stark stood on the battlements looking toward the horizon. He had tried to do the right thing, but the Game of Thrones did not reward righteousness, only power, and power was coming for him. The scent of smoke had started to settle over King's Landing. Not from Tywin's fires yet, but from within. Refugees filled the streets. Food grew scarce. Tempers rose. The small folk didn't care about bastards or royal blood. They cared about bread, about safety, and now both were vanishing fast. Inside the Red Keep, Ned Stark walked the halls with a soldier's caution. Every door was a potential betrayal. Every whisper held danger. He trusted only a handful, Jory, Sir Barristan, maybe Renly, but even. Trust felt fragile. Robert Baratheon had grown quiet. He sat in his solar most days, staring into the fire, wine untouched. The weight of betrayal had broken something in him. He had ruled through force, not finesse, through charisma, not cunning, and now the truth had robbed him of everything, his children, his queen, and his peace. Ned entered the room, his voice low. We must act. Tywin won't wait. Robert's eyes were bloodshot. Why didn't you tell me sooner, Ned? Why didn't you let me deal with her? I trusted you would, but I feared what she'd do first. Robert gave a bitter chuckle. And now you've started a war. No, Cersei did. I only ended her lies. Robert stood, shaking, his face worn and heavy. Then let's finish what she started. We'll raise the banners. Call in the old. Debts. Ned nodded. We've already sent ravens to the Vale, the Reach, the Stormlands. Robb prepares in the north. Riverrun stands with us. But what about the city? Robert asked. These people, they're turning. He was right. In Flea Bottom, fires broke out nightly. Rumors painted Ned as a murderer, a traitor. The Queen's death had turned Cersei into a martyr in the eyes of many. And Joffrey, ever the actor, fed the flames, whispering vengeance from his golden cage in the tower. Varys warned Ned, "If you do not act soon, the city will crown a corpse out of desperation." So Ned turned to Renly Baratheon. The young, handsome lord had allies, gold, influence. "We need you to secure the gold cloaks," Ned said. "Ensure their loyalty. If the city riots, they must protect the realm, not turn on it." Renly smiled, too smug for Ned's liking. "You finally understand the game." "I understand survival." Renly made a show of loyalty, but Ned knew better than to rely too heavily on Baratheon blood. He turned next to Ser Barristan Selmy. "I want the King's Guard patrolling the streets. Show strength. Keep the peace." Ser Barristan nodded, honor shining in his eyes. "And what of the boy?" "Joffrey is no king. He is a lion cub without a claim. Keep him contained." Down in the dungeons, Joffrey spat curses at his guards. "I'll have all your heads. My grandfather will burn this city." When Ser Barristan visited, the boy sneered. "Do you forget who I am?" "You are the son of a kingslayer," Barristan replied coolly, "and your time on the throne is over." Outside the city, Tywin Lannister's army burned through the countryside. "Lord," Baelish returned with disturbing news. "The Freys are bending toward Tywin. They smell blood and gold." "And what of the Vale?" Ned asked. Baelish smirked. "Lysa sits in her tower, shaking at shadows. She will not march." That left the Reach and Dorne undecided. The realm teetered. A war without clear lines, where loyalties shifted like sand, in the wind. Then came a blow no one expected. Renly Baratheon vanished. One night he left the Red Keep with Loras Tyrell and a small retinue. The next morning a raven arrived at Storm's End. Renly had declared himself king. Ned stared at the parchment in disbelief. "What?" "He claims Robert has grown weak," Varys said, "that you have become too powerful, and he has the Reach behind him." "Highgarden sides with him?" "The Tyrells think of gardens, not justice. They follow the sun, not the truth." Ned felt the walls closing in. One enemy had been slain, but 3 more had risen. Tywin from the west, Renly from the south, Stannis from the east. Even with Robert alive, the realm was fracturing like glass under pressure. Arya sensed it. She stopped her sword practice and asked, "Is it true? They say we'll all die soon." Ned knelt beside her. "Not if we stand strong. But they're all against us." "Then we stand taller." That night Ned wrote to Robb a long, heavy letter. "The wolves must be ready. The north may be all that remains." He sent a second raven to Stannis. "I do not recognize Renly's claim. You are the rightful heir. If you wish peace, come to King's Landing. Speak with Robert. Unite the Baratheon name before it tears the realm apart." No reply came. Instead, 2 more cities rose in rebellion. The war had begun, not in full armies, but in fire and betrayal. And Ned Stark, once a man of honor, now stood on a throne of ash and choices. He looked out over King's Landing, heart heavy. He had killed Cersei Lannister, but peace had died with her. The morning sun cast a bitter light across the Red Keep, but it did little to warm the chill creeping into Ned Stark's bones. Every day in King's Landing now felt like a countdown, to war, to treachery, to collapse. The ravens carried only bad news. The Westerlands were fully at war. Tywin Lannister had taken the Golden Tooth and was advancing through the Riverlands like wildfire, burning everything in his path. Riverrun was besieged. Robb had begun marching south from Winterfell, gathering the bannermen of the north behind him. But Ned's mind was split. One part was with his son and the army that would one day face Tywin Lannister. The other was in the heart of the capital, rotting slowly, surrounded by enemies who smiled to his face. He had Ser Barristan and a few loyal guards, but the rest? Vultures. Varys, ever slippery. Littlefinger, all charm and venom. Renly had betrayed them, marching south to gather support for his own crown. The city guard was growing restless. Gold cloaks grumbled behind closed doors about back pay and starving families, and worst of all, Robert Baratheon was dying. Not from wounds, but from guilt, from drink, from rot inside his soul. He had stopped attending council meetings. He slept all day and roared at servants when he woke. When Ned confronted him, Robert simply growled, "I was king once. Let the realm burn. Let them choke on their lies." "You are still king," Ned said sharply. "I am nothing," Robert shouted, flinging his cup across the solar. "My wife is dead. My children were lies. My brothers want my throne. And you, Ned, you think you're the only man left with honor? That's not honor. That's stupidity dressed in steel." Ned's fists clenched, but he didn't reply. He had never hated Robert before. Now he pitied him. The only stability left was the growing friendship between Ned and Ser Barristan Selmy. The old knight had taken it upon himself to maintain order in the Red Keep. He doubled the guard rotations, ensured that Tommen and Myrcella were kept safe, even as the court whispered that they were bastards and not royal at all. One day, Barristan pulled Ned aside. "You made a hard choice when you killed the queen," he said, "but you left lions in every corner." "I gave them a clean blade and an honorable way out," Ned said bitterly. "They spit on it. Lions don't kneel, Lord Stark. They pounce." And pounce they did. On the 10th day of the new moon, a riot broke out in Flea Bottom. Grain carts were attacked. Gold cloaks abandoned their posts. The small folk screamed for bread, but deeper down, the whispers said more. Ned Stark killed. The Queen. The North will rule us. Joffrey was the true heir. As the fires rose from the slums, Littlefinger appeared once again, always dressed in calm-like armor. "You should have let her go, Ned. Played the game. Let Robert die, and crowned the boy. He'd have owed you everything." "I don't deal in debts and lies," Ned answered. Littlefinger smirked. "Then you deal in death, and death doesn't pay." Ned had him thrown out of the Tower of the Hand. That same night, Arya went missing. The alarm was raised within minutes. Her guard was found unconscious in the stables. One of her boots was found outside the main gate, soaked in mud. Ned's heart dropped. He searched every hall, every chamber. He sent ravens to all city gates. Varys swore his little birds would find her. Sansa screamed when she found out. "She ran away because you're a monster. You destroyed everything." "I did what was right," Ned whispered. "You killed a queen," Sansa spat. "You turned the whole world upside down." The next day, a message came. Scribbled, messy, handwriting on parchment wrapped around a pigeon's leg. "Your girl lives. Keep the war away from us, or lose her forever." No signature, no symbol, just ink and threat. Ned crushed the paper in his fist. Someone had taken Arya. Someone inside the city. Perhaps Lannister loyalists. Perhaps worse. He told no one. Not yet. That night, as he sat alone, Varys visited him again, silent as fog. "Your enemies grow bolder." The girl was a message, my lord. There are those who still serve House Lannister in secret. Ned glared. "Do you know who?" Varys only sighed. "I know that you are losing. The people hate you. The court fears you. And even Robert, he barely stirs." "Then help me fix it," Ned said. "I am helping," Varys replied. "I am telling you what no one else will. Kill the boy. Kill Joffrey. Execute Jaime. Make it loud. Show the realm that wolves do not whimper." But Ned Stark could not do that. Not yet. Instead, he began making plans. If the city fell, he would escape with his daughters, find Arya, leave the capital to burn in its own sins. He began to write letters, one to Robb, one to Stannis, and one to the Night's Watch. He wrote them by candlelight, heart aching with every word. In his final letter to Robb, he wrote, "If the wolf is cornered, it bites. Do not hesitate, march fast, fight hard, and never trust a lion." Meanwhile, outside the gates, smoke rose from the riverlands. The war had come, and Ned Stark knew. This was just the beginning. The castle walls of King's Landing trembled, not from cannon blasts or battering rams, but from something quieter, deadlier: fear, suspicion, treachery. It started in the kitchens, then the stables, then the sept, men whispering about King, Robert's strange silence, about the North plotting a coup, about the ghost of Cersei walking the halls, crying for vengeance. The small folk grew desperate. The gold cloaks twitched at shadows, and above them all, Ned Stark stood in a tower turning into a prison. He'd received no word from Arya's captors, no demands, just silence. Every passing hour was a dagger in his gut. He had trusted this city for too long. Now it held his daughter like a secret. He was surrounded by enemies in his own walls. Robert hadn't left his chamber in days. The king's health had worsened, though not from wounds. He was dying, slowly, from drink, shame, and grief. Maester Pycelle insisted it was merely a fever, but Ned knew better. He could see it in Robert's eyes when he visited, hollow, red-rimmed, wet with guilt. "Too many lies, Ned," Robert mumbled from his bed, his voice faint. "They pile up until you drown in them." "You can still fix it," Ned urged. "Claim your true heir. Unite the realm before Tywin tears it apart." But Robert just stared through him like a ghost. And then, on the first day of winter's wind, the king finally died. He passed quietly in his sleep, alone, without fanfare. No crown, no sword in hand, just a man crushed by his own sins. Ned was with him within the hour. He knelt at the foot of the bed and whispered, "I'll protect the realm, even if it kills me." Word spread fast. The king was dead, and with him the last thread of unity holding the realm together snapped. Chaos erupted in the throne room. Renly's flight south now looked like prophecy. He would crown himself king before the body was even cold. Stannis sent his own raven, declaring Robert's will void. And Joffrey demanded the throne. He stormed into the chamber of the Iron Throne, surrounded by gold cloaks who had no love for him but feared the storm outside the gates. "I am king now," Joffrey declared, standing beneath the Iron Throne like a brat playing at war. "And any man who denies me is a traitor." Sir Barristan stepped forward, blade sheathed but hand resting on the hilt. "You are no king. You are a bastard born of incest." The hall fell silent. Joffrey's face went pale, then red, then twisted with fury. "Seize him!" But the gold cloaks didn't move. Not yet. Ned stepped into the hall, carrying Robert's true will, the sealed parchment. "I hold Robert's final command," Ned said. He named Stannis his heir. Joffrey has no claim. He offered it to Sir Janos Slynt, commander of the Gold Cloaks, but Janos didn't take it. He took a step back, and that's when Ned knew. The betrayal was already in motion. A crossbow bolt sliced past his shoulder and struck the wall behind him. Chaos exploded in the chamber. Swords were drawn, screams echoed through the throne room. The Gold Cloaks attacked, half of them loyal to the coin, not the crown. The other half fell quickly. Jory Cassell leapt in front of Ned, his sword flashing. He fought off 2 guards before a spear found his side. He collapsed without a sound. Sir Barristan tried to reach Ned, but too many surrounded him. Varys vanished in the confusion. Pycelle was on the floor, crying and praying, and Joffrey laughed. That twisted, delighted laugh of a boy who had always gotten what he wanted. "Take him alive," Joffrey shouted. "We'll show the realm what happens to traitors," Ned fought. He cut one man down, then another, but a mace hit his leg, and he staggered. A sword glanced off his shoulder. Blood poured into his eyes. Still, he stood, until Ser Janos struck him in the back of the head with the pommel of his sword. Darkness swallowed him. When Ned woke, he was in a cell beneath the Red Keep. His hands were chained. His shoulder burned. His head pounded. He'd been betrayed, again, by the gold cloaks, by the city, perhaps by fate itself. A figure entered the cell, small, soft-footed, and dressed in silks. Varys. Ned spat blood at his feet. "How many sides? Do you play, Spider?" "I play only one, Lord Stark," Varys said softly, "the side of peace, of survival. You let them take me. I tried to stop it. But Littlefinger bought Slint. He bought more than that." Ned laughed, bitter. "He always said chaos was a ladder. Now you're the step beneath his boot." Ned sat back, eyes dull. "Then let them kill me. I've done all I can." But Varys leaned in, whispering like wind. "No, there is one more thing you can do. One last game to play." Ned stared at him. "They want your confession," Varys said. "They want you to name yourself a traitor, to bend the knee to Joffrey, to save your daughters." "My daughters?" "Yes, Sansa still lives in the castle. But Arya, if you confess, they may bring her back." Hope flickered, just for a second. Varys saw it and pressed. "Lie, Lord Stark, just once. Lie, and live." And for the first time in his life, Eddard Stark considered it. The black stone walls of Ned Stark's cell seemed to lean in closer with each passing day. He no longer knew if it was morning or night. Only the dim flicker of torches and the distant echoes of screams or laughter from the dungeons above told. Time now. But something else was changing, something deeper inside him. Honor had been his armor for years. His father had died for it, his brother too. And now it had brought him here, chained, beaten, betrayed. And yet Varys's words haunted him. "Lie, Lord Stark, lie and live. Save your daughters." He thought of Arya, wherever she was, a fierce, stubborn little wolf who didn't belong in a city of snakes, and Sansa, broken by the court, crying herself to sleep inside the Red Keep. He had failed them both. He had fought, with truth, and lost. Maybe it was time to try something else. When the guards came for him, he didn't resist. They dragged him up the long steps to the Sept of Baelor, where a massive crowd had gathered in the square. Rumors had spread like wildfire. The traitor would speak. The false hand of the king would finally kneel. Sansa stood near the platform, cheeks sunken, her red hair tangled, her eyes wide and wild with fear. She clutched Ser Boros's arm like it was the only thing holding her upright. Joffrey was already seated atop a raised dais, dressed in gold and crimson, smug as a crowned devil. Beside him sat Cersei's empty chair, a ghost in velvet. When Ned was brought before them, Sir Elin Payne stood with ice in his hands, his own sword, stolen and prepared for his execution. Ned's knees ached as they forced him down. "Grand Maester," Pycelle read a long scroll of charges. Treason, conspiracy, assassination of the Queen, attempt to steal the throne. The crowd jeered, rotten fruit flew. Someone spat at him. Joffrey raised his hand, and silence fell. "We give Lord Eddard Stark one final chance," the boy king said, voice shaking with excitement. "Speak, and beg for mercy. Confess your crimes before the gods in this city." He looked at the crowd. He saw hate. He saw ignorance. But in one corner he saw a hooded figure, small, slight, watching intently. He didn't know how, but he knew it was Arya. He closed his eyes, and he spoke. "I am Eddard Stark," he began, voice hoarse, "and I am a traitor." Gasps erupted. Even Joffrey leaned forward, delighted. "I conspired against King Joffrey," Ned continued, knowing he was the rightful heir. "I tried to steal the crown for Stannis Baratheon. I did all of this out of pride, out of fear, and I beg forgiveness." He looked to Sansa, who was sobbing now, hands clutched to her mouth. "I am sorry," he whispered. Joffrey stood triumphant. "Let it be known," he declared, "that mercy is a king's gift, and I—" But Cersei's voice, cold and clear, cut through the crowd like a blade. "No, he dies." Joffrey hesitated, but Cersei had taught him well. "Sir Elin, bring me his head." The crowd roared, stunned and bloodthirsty. Sansa collapsed. The guards held her down. Arya tried to push forward, but someone pulled her back. An older man, strong and silent. Syrio Forel? Or perhaps a shadow Varys sent. Ned looked up as Ser Elin raised ice. The blade glinted in the sunlight. His blade, his father's blade, and, in his final moment, he saw Winterfell. Snow falling on the godswood, the laughter of his children, the sound of the direwolves howling in the distance. Then only silence. The blade came down, and the world cracked. In the north, the news spread, like fire through the trees. When the Raven reached Winterfell, Robb Stark stood before the weirwood, clutching the message with shaking hands. "Your father confessed," it said. "He was executed for treason. King Joffrey rules now." Robb said nothing for a long time. The wind whispered through the leaves. Maester Luwin stood behind him, unsure whether to speak. Then Robb tore the letter in two. He didn't weep. He didn't rage. He turned to Theon. "Call the banners, every last one." Theon grinned. "It's time." Robb's voice was iron. "We ride to war." Lady Stark rode with them, her grief sharpening her words like steel. She had lost her husband. She would not lose her son. From Bear Island to the Dreadfort, from White Harbor to Deepwood Motte, the North answered. They didn't ride for gold. They didn't ride for glory. They rode for vengeance. And when Robb Stark stood before his army, cloak billowing, eyes cold as a winter storm, he shouted a single command. The king in the north rides to war. The wolves had been quiet too long. Now they howled. The snow had not yet begun to fall in the riverlands, but winter had already settled into the bones of men. Robb Stark rode at the head of 20,000 northern soldiers, each carrying a grudge heavier than their steel. They marched not just for revenge, but for justice that had been mocked in the capital. And above them, the northern banners flew high, not for a king in King's Landing, but for a king of their own. Robb Stark had not asked to be king. But when the lords gathered beneath the red moon at River Run and called him king in the north, he had not refused. How could he? His father's head had rolled beneath southern sun. The South had taken too much, too often. And now, the wolves were returning the favor. Their first target was Tywin Lannister. The lord of Casterly Rock. Was he still deep in the riverlands, cutting down villages, torching crops, trying to bait the Tullys into open battle? But he hadn't expected Robb to move so quickly, so ruthlessly. At the Battle of the Red Fork, Robb's army struck hard, ambushing the Lion's vanguard near a shallow ford. Lord Roose Bolton, quiet and cold-eyed, led the center. The Great John, and his berserkers came from the flank like thunder. And Robb, riding with Grey Wind at his side, struck at the heart like a storm. The battle didn't last long. The Lannister knights, armored and proud, didn't understand the fury of the North until it was too late. Hundreds fell. Tywin barely escaped with his life, retreating westward with what remained of his host. Robb didn't celebrate. He buried. The dead then marched again. South, always south. In King's Landing, the city was no longer a capital. It was a cage. Joffrey sat the Iron Throne, but even the boy knew fear now. Whispers of the North's fury had reached every corner of the court. Lords who had once smiled at Joffrey now looked past him, calculating their own survival. Cersei tightened her grip on power. Sir Eilen, her sword. Sir Meryn, her dog. The city watched her with dread, and though she wore her mourning black like armor, she had not mourned long. She celebrated victory in private. Ned Stark was dead. The North could rage, but the throne was safe. Or so she thought. Varys came to her one night, quiet and pale. "There is talk in the streets," he said. "Talk of wolves coming for the lion." "I care nothing for whispers," she snapped. But she listened. Later, in her chambers, Cersei asked Ser Jaime, now freed and armed again, what he would do if Robbie Stark reached the capital. Jaime only smiled. "Then I'll kill him, just like his father." But Cersei frowned. Even she knew. Robb wasn't his father. He was something colder. Meanwhile, Sansa Stark lived like a shadow in the Red Keep. Her spirit had shattered when her father's head rolled, and the court didn't let her forget it. They paraded her at feasts, dressed. Her in southern silks made her smile for lords who mocked her behind their goblets. Joffrey's cruelty had turned from games to something darker. He showed her her father's sword, mounted above the throne room doors. Sometimes he made her look at it before dinner. Sometimes he made her name each part of it. But Sansa no longer cried. She watched and learned. She remembered her father's last words to her. The North remembers. And so did she. Arya, meanwhile, was on the run. After the chaos of the Sept, she had slipped into the streets like smoke. With help, likely from Varys or his little birds, she had escaped the Red Keep and now traveled under a false name. Dressed as a boy. She sharpened her anger with every step, moving north, toward her brother, toward vengeance. At River Run, Cat sat beside her dying father, Lord Hoster, and tried to find something left of her old life. But the world had changed. She had buried her husband's bones in silence. Now she watched her son bear the weight of kingship. He was strong, but he was still her boy. "He doesn't sleep," she whispered to Maester Vyman. "He barely eats. He just marches." "Because he knows what's coming," V-Man said softly. "Because he's afraid if he stops, he'll shatter." Cat rose and joined Robb in the war tent that evening. He stood over a map of the Westerlands, eyes blazing. "We cross the Trident at Fairmarket," he said. "Take the Gold Road. Cut. Their supplies before Tywin can regroup." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've already won one battle." Robb didn't look up. "Not enough. Not until I sit Joffrey's head beside Father's grave." Cat stared at him, unsure whether to be proud or afraid. The war had changed her son. And the realm. In the east, Renly Baratheon crowned himself king and made alliances through smiles and silk. The Reach bent knee, tempted by marriage and golden harvests. Stannis, on Dragonstone, sharpened, his fury like a blade, preparing to strike with fire and faith. 3 kings, 1 throne, and all the while the wolves crept closer. In the north, the old gods stirred. Winter came early that year. Snow touched the Eyrie. Frost kissed the stones at Moat Cailin, and at the wall, the Night's Watch sent ravens that no one read. Because no one listened. Because the South was burning in its own madness. Because the true danger was still to come. But in the West, the people spoke of one name. Not Joffrey. Not Stannis. Not Renly. They whispered of the young wolf. The king, in the north, and how he was coming to tear down the lions, one claw at a time. The gold road was painted in blood. Smoke curled from ruined villages, Lannister banners smoldered on broken poles, and silence fell wherever the dire wolf passed. Robb Stark's army moved like a thunderstorm, swift, cold, merciless. The West, so long feared for its gold and steel, had finally met a fury it could not buy off. The war had become personal. No longer about thrones or names scribbled on parchments. It was about a father betrayed, a family torn apart, a realm too corrupt to save. Robb Stark no longer spoke of alliances or negotiations, only of vengeance. The final march on Casterly Rock began in early spring. Robb stood at the cliffs overlooking the lion's den, wind tearing through his cloak. The castle loomed ahead, majestic, ancient, rich in legend, the seat of House Lannister. But Robb saw only a tomb. He turned to his bannerman, Rose Bolton, grim as ever, Lord Umber, bloodied but grinning, Sir Brynden Blackfish, silent and steady. No. Quarter, Robb ordered. No mercy. And none was given. The siege lasted 3 days. The Lannisters fought hard, proud, fierce but fractured. Without Tywin, who had fallen back to Harrenhal to regroup, they were leaderless. Sir Kevin tried to hold the gate, but the North broke through it with flaming pitch and brute will. Grey Wind was the first to leap over the walls, teeth bared, eyes wild. He tore through red-cloaked guards as if they were straw dolls. Inside the rock, they found Lannister children hiding behind drapes, women begging for mercy, gold piled in vaults, untouched. Robb ignored it all. He wanted one thing. He found Ser Jaime in the main hall, sword in hand, golden hair matted with sweat. Well, well, Jaime smirked, his lip bloodied. The pup's grown teeth. You always thought this was a game, Robb said, lowering his sword. But you played with the wrong family. Jaime didn't beg, didn't kneel. He lunged. The fight was short. Jaime was fast. But Robb was driven. And Grey Wind was faster. When the dust settled, Ser Jaime lay gasping, blood spilling from his chest. He looked up at Robb, chuckled bitterly. You're just like your father. No, Robb said coldly. He would have spared you. Then he turned away. Casterly Rock fell that night, and with it, the lion's pride. Far to the south, in King's Landing, Joffrey screamed when he heard. He hurled goblets at the walls, ordered executions in the streets, and demanded that every raven heading north be shot down. But fear had finally found him. Cersei tried to keep control, but even she knew. The tide had turned. The court that once bent knee now shuffled nervously. Lords fled in the night. Tyrells reconsidered their alliances. Even the gold cloaks hesitated before enforcing the crown's commands. Sansa Stark watched from her balcony, a ghost in silk. She had survived beatings, humiliation, and grief. Now she waited. One evening, she stood before Joffrey in the throne room. I hear my brothers won another battle, she said calmly. I wonder how long you'll keep your pretty little head. Joffrey slapped her, hard, but her smile never faded. You're afraid, she whispered. And he was. Because Robb was marching south now. With the rock fallen, the riverlands cleared, and the North united behind him, Robb moved with confidence. His forces grew as word of his victories spread. Even the Stormlands began to falter in their loyalty to Renly. Stannis, brooding on Dragonstone, grew restless, watching a wolf rise while he stood still. The boy who once begged for news of his father's fate now commanded armies. Men called him the Young Wolf. Some called him the Northern Reaper, but to Cersei, to Joffrey, to the crumbling court, he was the end. As Robb reached the Blackwater, ravens began to arrive. One carried a letter with a seal of fire and stag. Stannis Baratheon requests alliance. The pretender boy must fall. Let us divide the south and cleanse the throne. Robb read it, then burned it. Another letter came from Renly's camp, an offer of marriage to Marjorie, a southern alliance sealed in roses and power. He ignored it. He wrote no replies. He marched. Because this wasn't about thrones anymore. This was about family, and his sisters still lived in that cursed city. Then came the storm. On the 9th day of Robb's siege of King's Landing, under cover of night, a northern force breached. The city gates through the sewers, led by Arya Stark, dressed in rags, blade in hand, and backed by loyal gold cloaks Varys had turned. The gates fell before dawn. Joffrey tried to run. He never made it past the throne room. When Robb entered the Red Keep, his brother's sword already wet with blood, the Iron Throne stood empty. Cersei was found in her chambers clutching a bottle of nightshade. Sansa stood beside her, eyes red, hands shaking. Robb pulled her into his arms. "You came." She sobbed. "I said I would," he whispered. A week later, in the same square where their father was killed, Robb Stark stood before the people of King's Landing. "I do not want this throne," he said, loud and clear. "I do not want your titles. I want my family, my home, my justice." He turned to Stannis, who had arrived too late, to Renly, who had arrived too pretty. "The South can fight over crowns," Robb said. "The North will never kneel again." And with that, he left the capital. The Iron Throne was left cold. The lions were broken, and the North remembered. Back in Winterfell, as snow fell gently on the godswood, Robb Stark stood beneath the old heart tree. Grey wind at his side, Arya and Sansa safe within the walls, Catelyn watching with quiet pride, and above, the wind whispered. He did what Ned never could. The war was over, but the wolf would always be watching.